This happened back in 2013. I live in the UK and I was 15 years old at the time. It was around mid-May when my grandfather, who was 82 years of age, sadly passed away due to several health issues. He was a cherished and respected man who many of us miss to this day. As my family and I are Hindu, we deal with death in our religion differently than most. It starts with a mourning period that lasts up to 13 days. Within that time, the family will come and pay their respects at the deceased's house. We would celebrate the life of the departed and say prayers to allow them to move on in peace. I'm not entirely religious myself, but I will follow these traditions to honor my grandfather. During the mourning period, my mother would drive me and my sister to my grandparents' house every day after school. Most of my family would always be there during this time, so the house was usually pretty full. Back then I had some upcoming exams, and I always made sure to bring my school material, which my mom encouraged me to do. Everyone would usually be downstairs, either in the front room, the living room, or the kitchen. I went upstairs to one of the bedrooms to study alone. I remember shutting the door to mute the noise from downstairs and began studying for my exam. I was about half an hour into my studies when I heard a light tapping at the door. Because the door had no lock on it, I just assumed it was one of my younger cousins trying to annoy me, so I shrugged it off. About 10 seconds after that, the door handle began to shake up and down, like someone was trying to get into the room. I froze in complete horror because I didn't know who or what was on the other side, and was trying to anticipate what would happen next. Suddenly the noise stopped. I waited 5 seconds before deciding to open the door. Nobody was there. I didn't see anyone running down the staircase laughing. I went into my grandma's room and nobody was in there either. I decided that it must have been my younger cousins, but when I went to go find them, they were in the front room playing with their toys beside my uncle's. I asked a couple of people if they had come upstairs at any point, and they all said no, which kind of creeped me out. I told my mom and grandma about it, and to my surprise, they told me that a similar thing happened to them a day or two ago. My grandparents have this cellar in the living room where they keep pots and pans. They all heard crashing sounds coming from down there, and when they went to go look, some of the pots and pans had fallen from the shelves, so naturally they were put back. But a few minutes later, they heard a crashing sound again, only to find the same pots and pans on the floor. My mom told me that it was probably my grandfather letting us know that he was still around. This made me wonder if he in some way tried to open the door upstairs while I was studying. My grandfather was known to be a prankster, which made sense to me. I did have some belief in the paranormal, and this only increased it further. After the peaceful cremation service and the final feast, no other strange events happened again. It was scary at the time, and it's still kind of creepy thinking back to it now, but in a way, it was nice feeling to know that my grandfather was still there, and I can only hope now that he has found peace. Back in 2007-2008, I was a teenager. There was this old abandoned house that sat in a park that was close to my hometown. My friends and I would pass by this old house many times, but never really gave it much thought. That was until the day we decided to have a closer look. It looked like any other residential house from the outside, except it stood alone in the middle of the park. There was a stone wall that surrounded the property, which we had little difficulty scaling. Once on the other side, we navigated through the thick undergrowth of shrubs until we eventually reached the front door. We removed 3 boards that were tacked on the front door, and then cautiously entered the house. Inside was completely empty. There was no furniture, no pictures, nothing. We then explored upstairs. When we got to the second floor, we were faced with 4 doors lining a hallway, each locked with not 1, not 2, but 3 sliding bolt locks. Glancing at each other, we selected the nearest door and began unlocking the bolts. Inside the rooms were these metal beds that looked like something straight out of an old asylum. Each room also had an armchair and a wardrobe.
What is this place?
My friend asked. I don't know, but why would they have 3 locks on the outside of the doors? We turned to the last pair of doors and began unlocking the bolts. Inside, we found the same setup. While I was still examining the room, my friend stepped back into the hallway and into the last remaining room. Shortly after, I heard him call out,
Hey, come and look at this.
Inside the last room, there was a hatch in the ceiling leading to an attic. We slid the wardrobe beneath the hatch, and I stood on it. Once I opened the hatch and looked inside the dark attic, I tested the floor with my free hand. It was severely unstable and wouldn't have been able to support my weight, so I didn't want to risk climbing up fully. I looked around a bit more, and I found an old rusted metal bat. The thing had taken a beating, or had given one, as it was heavily dented and worn. Look, I said, handing my friend the bat.
Locks on the doors? Metal bolts? What was this place?
After exploring the rest of the building and finding nothing more of interest, we went back down to the garden. Because it was so dark inside, we hadn't noticed the sunset, and it was almost pitch black outside at this point. We sat opposite the front door and began rolling a cigarette and discussing what we had found, when something made me look up at one of the windows. To this day, I still struggle to find the words to describe what I saw. I saw a figure standing in the window of one of the bedrooms. It wasn't transparent like a traditional ghost, nor was it solid. It was almost like an amalgamation of liquid and smoke. The figure's shape seemed to be illuminated by a glow that emanated from its form. I can make out that it was wearing a white doctor's coat contrasting the dark background. Its appearance had me completely frozen to the spot, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. Suddenly, I regained control of myself, and without saying a single word, I sprinted for the wall. As I was running, I wondered if I had really seen the apparition or not. My friend, who was much faster than me, stormed past me and continued running. Eventually, I caught up to him and asked him why he had been running, since I wasn't completely sure if he saw the same thing. What he said next has haunted me ever since.
I saw it too. The thing in the doctor's coat, standing in the window.
So these 2 experiences happened within a month of each other. The first one happened to my brother-in-law. The second one I witnessed firsthand. So here we go. Back in 2007, my sister and her husband used to live with me and my mother. I was in middle school at the time. One Saturday night, my brother-in-law was working at his security job, and my sister and I were with my mom at a church function. These church services would last until about 8 to 8:30, so we wouldn't get home until around 9. That night, we pulled up to our mobile home. Usually, my brother-in-law would be inside waiting for us, but instead, he was outside standing by himself, looking like he had seen a ghost. As we pull into the carport, I notice that all the lights are off inside. When we get out of the car, he lifts his hand, points at the house, and says in a shaken voice,
I'm not going in there by myself.
We asked him what happened, and this is what he told us.
I came home and I was walking into the carport and was about to enter the house. I heard what sounded like a group of people talking and laughing inside the house. I heard silverware and dishes clinking like there was some sort of dinner party, but all the lights were off. I thought you guys were trying to pull a prank on me or something. So I go up the steps and I pull out my house key. The whole time, I still hear muffled chatter and laughing and even music. As soon as I put the house key into the doorknob lock, I heard someone go, shh, and then the entire house went silent, like everything just stopped at once. As soon as I open the door, I hear a fucking stampede of people running in the opposite direction. At this point, I'm starting to think that it wasn't a prank, and some people had broken into the house and were trying to leave before they got caught. So I ran around the back of the house to cut them off at the back door. But once I got there, everything went quiet. I thought that maybe whoever was inside didn't run out because they knew I was on the other side. So I sprinted back to the front door, opened it, and ran inside. It was quiet and pitch black. I turned on all the lights and cleared the entire house. Not one thing was out of place. Nothing to indicate at all that anyone was there. That's when I ran outside and waited for you guys to get here.
The second occurrence happened a month later, in the same house. My mom was out doing something, I don't remember what, and my sister and her husband were on a date. Halo 3 had just come out, and my brother-in-law kept his Xbox in his room. Before he left that night, I begged him to play the game while he was gone, and he reluctantly agreed. So I had the whole house all to myself. I turned on all the lights in the house for obvious reasons, but since I wanted the full effect of the video game, I turned off the light in my brother-in-law's room. So the only light was coming from the TV. As I'm playing, I feel like someone's walking around in the house. When living in a mobile home, you can feel every movement. I paused the game and waited to hear something. After a few moments of silence, I decided to say something. Hello? No response. I go back to playing the game, brushing off the noise. A few moments later, I see a shadow from under the door out of the corner of my eye. I pause the game and look directly at the door, and the shadow moves out of sight. At first, I think someone had come home early, so I call out again, but I get no response. Now I'm getting a little freaked out, and sitting in the dark room trying to hear any noises in the house. All of a sudden, I hear the refrigerator door open. Everybody knows that sound. I get up and open the door. I look to the left where the kitchen was. The refrigerator door was closed, but the kitchen light was now off. In fact, all the lights on the left side of the house were off. Now I'm low-key starting to panic, thinking that there's a burglar or something in the house. So I quietly walk to the living room, keeping my eye on the dark dining room area, and then turn on the TV, turning up the volume as loud as I can. I then turn on the kitchen light, which slightly illuminates the dining room. I then quickly turn on the dining room light and jumped into the middle of the room, yelling, hoping that I would frighten any trespassers. However, no one was there. I then run through the entire house as fast as I could, bashing doors and yelling as I do so. No one other than me was inside the house, and all the doors and windows were closed and locked. If someone had opened the fridge, they wouldn't have had enough time to get past the door to go outside without me seeing. I go back into my brother-in-law's room, lock the door, and blast the TV as loud as I could, and played Halo 3 until my mom got home. I know that our landlord's parents had both died inside that house of old age. The kitchen and the dining room were the spots where most of the activity took place. Before this, I didn't really believe in ghosts or demonic entities, but the power of experience is persuading.